looked at the captured submarine and shook his head. No need. He had to use Buddy's boat in the spur of the moment. Now that Harry had achieved his goal, he felt there was no need to trouble Buddy anymore. Besides, Harry had another means of transportation. Harry wouldn't kindly return the submarine that he had just captured. Coincidentally, the supply ship had not left yet. The supply ship had not fled the area because they were terrified after seeing the submarine being attacked and forced to surface. They had just been hired by the Egyptian royal family to follow a route and wait to be contacted. They had little knowledge of what was actually happening. Harry brought his men to board the submarine. Before bidding farewell to Buddy, Harry handed him his business card. On it was written Harry's name, position, and company name. Buddy was focused on Michaela and didn't even bother to read the card. He just subconsciously took it and put it in his pocket. Then, he reluctantly said goodbye to Harry and Michaela. It was just a glimpse, but Buddy was already struck by Michaela's beauty. When he saw how easily Harry had made the submarine resurface, he decided it was best not to bother Michaela. Buddy would keep the business card in his pocket and forget that it was there. After bidding farewell to Buddy, Harry took his men to drive the submarine and began their journey back to Florida. As for the crew of the submarine, Harry didn't want any loose ends. When they passed by a deserted island, he escorted the prisoners off the sub. They were free to do as they pleased on the island. Harry just wanted them gone. The space inside the submarine was already crowded. Harry had brought many men with him. After dealing with these people, the submarine became much more spacious. Michaela, who had been rescued, slowly regained her cheerful appearance as she recovered her energy. Leaning on Harry, Michaela felt incomparably at ease. But Harry was different. This matter wasn't over yet. Saving his sister was only the first step. The Egyptian royal family had made a terrible mistake angering Harry. As for the council, Harry was no longer able to sit idle while they conspired to ruin everything he had built and loved. The council had already started to take action. If Harry was always on the defensive, he'd be fighting a losing battle. This time, his sister's kidnapping had given Harry a wake-up call. Secretly calculating his current strength in his head, Harry felt that it was time to launch a counterattack. However, before he launched a counterattack, he needed a plan. To start a full-scale conflict with the council, he needed timing and a lot of luck. After all, this wasn't a game, but a life-and-death struggle. There was no possibility of a settlement between Harry and the council. Only one of them could survive. Harry, what are you thinking about? Michaela saw that Harry was silent the whole time, so she asked. Harry put away his serious face and smiled. It's nothing. Just some work I have to get done. Are you tired? Do you want to go and rest? Michaela buried her head into Harry's arms. Do you want to take revenge on the people who kidnapped me? I will handle these things myself. You don't have to worry about it. Harry didn't want his sister to pay attention to these matters. Michaela said, I know that I can't do anything right now, but I want to help. I always feel like a burden to you. Harry quickly stopped the topic and didn't let her continue. What are you talking about? Why would you think that you're a burden to me? You're my sister. As long as I see you happy every day, I'll be happy. After coaxing Michaela to sleep, Harry went to the command cabin. Withdraw all our men from the ports, Harry instructed. Sir, are we going to fight back? We can't let those men who kidnapped Michaela go so easily, his men said in surprise. Harry sneered. Of course, we won't let them off easily. Let's withdraw all of our men first. I have my own plans. Yes, sir. When the men saw Harry's expression, they understood that he was about to make a big move. They didn't continue to ask him anything. A command was sent out, and all the men who had been sent to Egypt had retreated. Harry had ordered the submarine to remain on the surface so that he could be in constant contact with his men. June, who stayed behind in the manor, heaved a sigh of relief when she found out that Michaela had been rescued. She didn't dare to imagine how angry Harry would have been if something had happened to Michaela. Fortunately, everything was safe and sound. Egypt and the council? You've messed with the wrong man, June muttered to herself. June had guessed what Harry was going to do after learning that he took back all of his men. It wouldn't be peaceful after this. Harry was ready to attack. On the other side, Buddy, who had parted ways with Harry, returned to his home. With lingering fear, he told his family about what had happened. His father, the shipbuilding king of Italy, Giorno Gallucci, asked with a serious look, "Do you know who this Harry is?" Buddy shook his head and said, "How would I know? Oh, right, he gave me a business card." As he spoke, he searched everywhere. "Where did I put the business card? I remember it was right here." After searching for a long time, a guard finally took it out from his clothes. "Is this the business card you're looking for?" Buddy took it excitedly. Yes, this is it." He handed it to his father. "Take a look." Giorno took it over. With just a glance, he jumped up in shock. "The chairman of the Fantasy Electric Car Company? Is there a problem?" Buddy still had a dumbfounded look on his face. "Oh, idiot! Why did I give birth to such a useless moron? Do you know what you've missed?" Giorno cursed in disappointment. Seeing that Buddy was still ignorant, he explained, "The man you met is the guy who owns the new electric car and the mobile company that's been shattering the market." Only then did Buddy react. He had a chance encounter with Harry, and he had even helped him by accident. This kind of opportunity was rare. Even though Buddy was a playboy who didn't know anything, he knew that he missed a good opportunity for himself and his family. Fantasy was popular all over the world. They were highly advanced technology and looked very fashionable. Everyone wanted one. Their sales had jumped exponentially. It also made the competitors do everything they could to stay profitable. Currently, Buddy's country doesn't have access to the Fantasy electric car. If the people here wanted to buy Fantasy electric car products, they could only do so overseas. There was an endless stream of orders for products. What was even more exciting was that Fantasy electric car didn't yet have an agent here. There were too many people in Italy who wanted to get the rights of the Fantasy electric car dealership, but until now, no one had succeeded. The main reason was that only Harry could give the dealership rights, but Harry wasn't a public figure. No one was able to find Harry, so no one was able to get the right to sell his products. Buddy was able to know Harry for a short amount of time, and he had unintentionally helped Harry. This was a great opportunity. Although his family was said to be a giant in the shipbuilding industry, this industry had long reached a bottleneck. If his family wanted to grow and expand, they had to find a new way to make money. Being able to sell the Fantasy electric cars would make them richer than selling all the ships their family built combined. The risk was low, but the benefits in the future were astronomically high. Buddy was feeling very regretful now. Although his family was already very rich, they had always been the kind of people to make more money every day. The richer a person was, the more they wanted to earn. Buddy wasn't sure if Harry would give him the rights to sell his products. However, he had been very nice to Harry and helped him in his time of need. "Father, what should we do now? I had no idea Harry was the owner of Fantasy. I'd have said something if I knew," Buddy said with regret. He said angrily, "Didn't Harry give you his card? You have to call him." "Oh, right, I forgot I can just call the number on the card," Buddy finally reacted. Giorno thought angrily, "Why did I have such a brainless son?" After returning to the manor, Harry closed the door with his henchmen and began planning out how he was going to attack the council. Although Harry was very strong now, he still had to be very careful when fighting the council. After all, the council was in control of the family and all their assets. Perhaps even Harry didn't know how much power was hidden within. "Harry, I feel that now isn't the time to directly clash with the council. The puppets they've sent after us are some really big players. We can't overextend ourselves or they'll kill us," June said. George also agreed. "Yes, the council is like a big tree. If we don't cut off those branches, we'll be attacked on multiple fronts." "Cut off the branches first," Harry murmured. "Yes, Harry, if we don't get rid of these puppets, we can't have a direct confrontation with the council. Once we start a fight with the council, we'll be vulnerable, and that's when they'll attack." All expressed their opinions, and what they said was very reasonable. Harry nodded his head in agreement. He also made a decision in his heart. Then let's first eliminate this problem in Egypt. Since Egypt had taken the initiative to attack them, Harry had no reason to let them go. Regardless of whether they were willing to do it or if they were urged by the council, Harry was going to attack Egypt. This was the puppet controlled by the council who needed to be eliminated quickly. However, after discussion, They realized that there was a very important condition that they couldn't meet in order to suppress Egypt. That was, Harry currently lacked the ability to send large amounts of his forces. Egypt was far away, 10,000 miles away, and there were 2 oceans separating them. If he wanted to send all of his power over, he needed a lot of boats. Harry had only rented out his boats for the island chain. He never figured he'd need to move around by water since he had a large yacht and plane. Whether it was the expedition to Egypt or the attack on the council, they needed a large number of boats to combat any resistance they found on the water. Previously, in order to save Michaela, Harry had sent thousands of his men to Egypt. However, that was only a small-scale infiltration. Therefore, Harry needed to be able to actively send forces into the ocean. At this moment, Harry's phone rang. When Harry saw that it was an unfamiliar phone, he didn't want to answer it at first. However, the phone kept ringing, and Harry picked it up impatiently. "Who is it?" "Yes, is this Harry?" A voice on the other side of the phone asked carefully. The voice sounded a little familiar, but Harry couldn't remember who it was that the voice belonged to, so he said, "I am? And who are you?" "It really is Harry. It's me, Buddy." The voice on the other end of the phone immediately became excited. Harry also smiled. "Oh, it's you. What's the matter?" Buddy was happy, but also nervous. He asked, After meeting, I feel that we became fast friends. Recently, I wanted to organize a cruise party. Are you interested in attending?" Harry's mind was full of thoughts about how he had to fight with the council and how he had no time to attend a cruise party. Without thinking, he rejected the offer. "Sorry, I have a lot of things to do. I don't have time. Thank you for the invitation." Then... Buddy was directly rejected by Harry. For a moment, he didn't know what flashed across his mind. Now was the time for him to buy ships, and Buddy was from the world-famous shipbuilding family. The corner of Harry's mouth revealed a trace of a smile. "Is there something you need from me? Just tell me," Harry said straightforwardly. He knew very well that he had just met this Buddy by chance. There was no friendship between them at all. Since he had already contacted him, it was only a matter of time before they got to the real reason for the call. He was most likely going to ask Harry to do something, which was why Harry didn't want to beat around the bush and talk to him. Buddy didn't expect Harry to be so direct. He deliberated over the phone for a while and then said, "Harry, it's like this. I want to sell your products in Italy." Harry smiled and thought, as expected. Buddy probably didn't look at his business cards seriously when he was on the ship. When he returned to his family, he found out about Harry's identity. He wanted to get the rights to sell, but at the same time, he couldn't say it out loud. After all, there was no friendship between the two of them. Buddy had no choice but to bite the bullet and make this call. He would first invite Harry to a party, and then, after mingling, he would take the opportunity to make a request. However, Buddy didn't expect Harry to be so direct. He directly made it clear on the phone call. What made him happy was that Harry didn't refuse on the spot, but gave an unexpected answer. "All right, we can discuss this matter. If you have time, come to my place and talk to me in person. It's not convenient to talk over the phone," Harry replied. This made Buddy overjoyed. He didn't expect things to go so smoothly. Of course, he never would have thought about what Harry's real intentions were. Harry needed the power to transport people from the sea. To put it bluntly, he needed a lot of ships. Although he could buy or place orders through other channels, the risk was too great. Once the council knew about Harry's actions, they would definitely do everything they could to stop him. Harry wanted to make a deal with Buddy and his family, so the council would be unaware of his actions. Buddy's family was a first-class shipbuilder king in the local area, but it wasn't ranked very high in the entire world. What he needed wasn't an ordinary ship, but a custom-made ship that had to withstand a certain amount of damage. To build this kind of ship, one needed time, and one needed to ensure quality. What Harry lacked most right now was time. That was why he needed to control a shipyard to produce everything to meet his needs. Next was the quality. Harry needed people he could trust, someone who wouldn't draw attention from the council. Therefore, Harry's current idea was to form a deep partnership with Buddy through this deal. He didn't need to completely control the shipyard, as long as they could build what he needed. After hanging up the phone with Buddy, Harry began to ponder. He wanted to counterattack the council in all aspects now, but building ships takes time. June also understood this problem and asked, "Harry, it will take quite some time to build the special ships that we need." The construction of ships now was actually very fast. If they were to start working at full power, a large ship with tens of thousands of tons of drainage would only need half a year or even 3 months to be seaworthy. However, Harry couldn't wait now. Even if he didn't immediately launch a counterattack against the council, he still had to deal with Egypt's royal family and their forces. If he didn't break Egypt's royal family into pieces, he wouldn't be able to vent his anger on the council. Seeing that Harry was silent, June said, "Harry, I have an idea." "Oh, tell me about it," Harry said. "Since the council has been supporting the puppet forces to fight against us, why don't we beat them at their own game?" "What do you mean?" Harry raised his eyebrows and somewhat understood what June meant. "Egypt is not a paradise. There's a lot of infighting, and some neighboring countries aren't too happy with their foreign policy." June spoke slowly. Ever since she knew that Egypt was a knife used by the council, June had already been studying the surrounding situation of this country for the sake of finding a way to deal with them like now. "We can contact Libya and give them some support. We can even give them help directly and help them to have more strength and confidence to deal with Egypt," June said. Harry said, "You mean to fight a proxy war with the council?" "Yes. With our current strength, it's enough. We can take advantage of the proxy war to delay the council. Then, we can have the time to build up our navy." Harry felt that this plan was feasible. They could exploit their strengths and avoid their weaknesses, and they wouldn't lose much from this plan. "Very good. This plan sounds good. However, the problem is that we don't have any contact with Libya. If we make contact with them and even give them support to expand the conflict between them and Egypt, will they do as we wish?" Harry was worried about this problem because there was no such thing as giving them benefits for no reason. June smiled. "Harry, have you forgotten about the royal family?" "The royal family? Can they be of use?" Harry asked. June nodded. "Of course. Libya has a deep relationship with the royal family. If the royal family didn't provide assistance in secret all these years, Egypt would have annexed Libya a long time ago." Harry was overjoyed. The royal family was now on the same boat as him, and they were allies. Through the royal family, it would be easier to get in touch with Libya. "Did Sean leave already?" Harry asked. After saving Michaela, Harry didn't see Sean. June said, "No, not yet. He's been staying at a hotel in Florida." "Invite him to have a meal. We can talk about this matter at the same time," Harry said. Sean now attached great importance to Harry's summons. After learning that Harry wanted to see him, he immediately went to the manor on Allen Island. After all, he was now counting on Harry to give him more standing in the royal family. If he wanted to obtain a higher position of succession, he had to continuously accumulate merit and reputation. The conflict between the royal family and Harry was resolved by Sean as an envoy. This was already a great contribution, but Harry gave him even more surprises. Not only did he give him the distribution rights of the fantasy series and super batteries, he also took the initiative to lower the cut that Harry would take from the profits. This way, Sean became very important in the royal family. "Harry, why did you summon me?" Sean asked as soon as he entered the room. He couldn't wait for Harry to go through the pleasantries. The more he helped Harry, the more capable he became. However, this time, Harry had a request for him. "I heard that you guys have secretly been supporting Libya." Harry went straight to the point. We've had some dealings with them. What do you want to know?" Sean didn't understand. Harry said, "You know about my sister being kidnapped by the Egyptian royal family. So, I have to punish them. However, it's not convenient for me to directly attack them now. I heard that there's been a conflict between Libya and Egypt." Before Harry could finish, Sean understood. After all, he was a prince. Sean was very clear about matters between countries, especially when it involved the two countries. "Would you like to use our influence in Libya to go against Egypt's royal family?" Sean slightly frowned. It wasn't that he didn't want Harry to interfere with Libya. Libya was weak. All these years, they had been supported by the royal family, so they could be considered a vassal of the royal family. "Harry, this isn't impossible. However, the strength of Libya is not much. I'm afraid it can't satisfy your request." Sean was in a bit of a dilemma. A small country like Libya would have a lot of difficulty fighting against a strong country like Egypt. If it wasn't for the support of the royal family, they would have been swallowed up by others long ago. Now that Harry wanted to intervene, the only way was to provide all kinds of assistance, especially when it came to weapons. However, there was still a problem with this. This was because the country was fighting with every able-bodied man already. It wasn't something that could turn the tables just by giving them some weapons. After Sean understood what Harry meant, he was very pessimistic. "What, do you think it's not possible?" Harry asked. "Harry, forgive me for being blunt. If you want to support Libya in a proxy war, you'll have to pay a lot of money. All these years, the royal family has been exhausted by keeping Libya from being annexed. Although the royal family was rich, Libya was like a bottomless pit. No matter how much money they invested, there was still no improvement. However, compared to the resources invested, the returns were too little." Harry waved his hand and said, "You don't have to worry about this. I have my own way to support Libya. As long as they can overturn Egypt, it'll be fine. However, if you invest your resources in Libya, your strength will definitely decline. Isn't this what the council wants?" Sean said. Harry nodded. "That's true, but I have a trump card up my sleeve, so you don't have to worry about that. You just need to use your relationship to help me build a relationship with Libya." Sean said helplessly, "All right, I can do that." "Okay, you should hurry up." After sending Sean off, a new guest came to Harry's manor. After getting Harry's clear authorization, Buddy's family couldn't wait any longer. They immediately arranged for a private jet to fly over. Buddy was the only one who came in the plane. This did not mean that their family did not value their cooperation with Harry enough. On the contrary, they felt even more nervous. That was why they sent Buddy by himself. After all, Buddy had a good relationship with Harry before. If someone else came with them, Harry might not welcome them. "Buddy, welcome to my home." Harry acted like a host and welcomed Buddy in. Buddy was shocked by Harry's private island as soon as he got off the plane. This was the first time in his life that he had seen someone as luxurious as Harry. The glittering appearance of the Jade Manor was enough to make Buddy gasp in amazement. However, he had come today for something more important. Therefore, even if he was shocked by Harry's luxurious manner, he had to try his best to keep it to himself. Buddy saw Harry's enthusiastic look. Harry's attitude was a clear indication of the problem. The two of them went to the living room of the manor. After they took their seats, they exchanged a few words with each other. Then he said bluntly, "Buddy, the reason I chose your family to give out the dealership of my company's products is not because we met once." "I'm guessing you like our line of work?" Buddy asked. Harry nodded. "Yes, let's be frank. Your family has a shipbuilding business, and I have a request." "Oh, you want to build a boat? No problem. I can give it to you at the most favorable price in the market." Harry smiled and shook his head. "Not only that, I want you to cut in front of other orders and use all your production capacity to produce the ships I need. Can you do it?" Buddy suddenly stopped. He didn't expect Harry to make such a request. He originally thought that Harry would only want a few ships, and Buddy could give him a discount. If the ships weren't big, he'd probably have built them for free for Harry. However, he didn't expect that Harry wanted to use their entire shipyard. Buddy carefully said, "Harry, how many ships do you want to build? We can build quite a lot." Harry said, "I already know this. You can make as much as I require." Buddy was a little dumbfounded. He didn't understand why Harry wanted to build so many ships. However, this was the condition that Harry proposed. Buddy needed the rights to sell Harry's products. Nothing would seem ridiculous when they knew their profits would skyrocket. Buddy had no choice but to accept Harry's request. He would either hand over the entire shipyard to Harry to start work, or he'd be giving up his distribution rights. Harry had a lot of shipyards in mind. If Buddy didn't want to give up his shipyards, it wouldn't slow Harry down. However, he chose Buddy now because he was more suitable. The other shipbuilding companies were either not large enough or owned by too big of a company to deal with efficiently, making it difficult for Harry to control them. But for someone as big as Buddy's family, they were a suitable choice for Harry. Buddy looked at Harry's expression and knew he didn't have a choice. After thinking for a while, he could only nod his head. It was true that his family's business was huge. The shipbuilding industry seemed to be popular, but the competition was too fierce. Because there were too many shipbuilders, the profits were split up. In fact, it was better to sell mobile phones and cars to make more money. Furthermore, shipbuilding was also a risky industry because shipbuilding took too long compared to other products. Many a time, the clients would send the deposit over and sign the contracts. However, in less than 3 to 5 months, the clients would go bankrupt. In the end, nobody wanted to buy an unfinished ship. It was very troublesome to dismantle the ship, and the expenses were also quite high. It would be even more troublesome to find the next owner after the construction was completed. Many semi-manufactured ships would often be thrown into a scrapyard like this, waiting for the ship to slowly rust. Most of the time, the shipyard was the one who had invested the money to build the ships first. Buddy's family saw that the shipbuilding industry was deteriorating day by day. For a long time, they had wanted to change. Now, Harry had given them a good chance. Buddy's family couldn't let this one slip away. Therefore, Buddy didn't need to think for too long and immediately agreed to Harry's conditions. In his opinion, Harry's requirements were fairly reasonable. He just wanted his family's shipyard to build ships for Harry. It wasn't like he had annexed the shipyards. Furthermore, Harry didn't say that he would pay for the shipyard. Even on account of the cooperation between the two parties, Buddy offered the most favorable price for the shipyard. In the current market environment, Buddy's family would still make a profit. No single customer had ever been able to buy out the entire shipyard for their personal use. The only thing Buddy needed to worry about was that none of Harry's orders encountered any problems. If there were any accidents along the way, then Buddy and his family would go bankrupt. Harry and Buddy had discussed the general framework of their contract. Today was a massive success for Buddy and his family. Naturally, they had people that would draw up all the legal documents, and they would finalize the deal while Harry and Buddy go about their business. Harry only needed to set the general direction for discussion. "I hope this deal is satisfactory to both of us," Harry stood up and said. Buddy also stood up and extended his hand respectfully. "Of course, I'm sure this deal will be lucrative for both of us." The two of them shook hands. "It's fate that I ran into you," Harry said. Harry wanted to treat Buddy to a meal, but Buddy was probably in a hurry to go home and report, so he respectfully refused. "I'm really sorry, I can't do it today. Some other day?" Buddy said apologetically. "It's all right, we can do it some other day," Harry said with a smile. After sending Buddy away, Harry was a little tired. Today, he was busy discussing countermeasures with his men, as well as discussing cooperation matters with Sean and Buddy. Harry now was a little tired. "Harry, are you tired?" June asked with concern. "Yes, a little. I've been busy this past week," Harry said lightly. June suggested, "Why don't you go to the bath and relax?" Harry's eyes lit up. "Yeah, that sounds nice." While Harry was enjoying his bath, Michaela was in school. After she was kidnapped, it caused quite a stir at school. The school also slowly calmed down. Only the students that had been with Michaela on the crazy trip were still thinking about it. They'd seen pirates and been on a treasure hunt. Then one of their friends was kidnapped right in front of everyone. After the afternoon class had ended, Michaela and her classmates prepared to go out for a stroll outside of the school. Girls always liked to shop, even though they had been to the same shops 100 times. However, it still attracted countless girls to come here one after the other to spend money. Michaela was the same. Although she had just gotten back from being kidnapped, she didn't want to stay in school all day. However, she didn't plan to walk too far. She just wanted to walk around the school. In the end, when she walked out of the school's main gate and reached the street corner, Michaela was stopped by an unfamiliar man. Harry never relaxed. Especially after the kidnapping incident, Harry increased the number of guards following her by 3 times the normal amount. Michaela usually lived at the school, so the security department of the school had already been taken over by Harry's men. As long as she stayed inside the school, no one would be able to take Michaela away. As for outside, it was the same. Michaela wanted to go for a stroll before the night, so there would be over 100 guards accompanying her. Of course, in order not to disturb the fun of shopping, these guards were dressed in ordinary clothing and mixed in with the crowd. Perhaps the few people following behind Michaela seemed to be passers-by, but they were actually disguised guards. On the side of the street, those who sold snacks squatted down to play with their phones, sat on the flower bed, and bragged to their friends. They were also Michaela's guards. Once something happened, these people would immediately throw away their disguises and would rush to protect her. When an unfamiliar man blocked Michaela's way, these guards immediately took action. Michaela, who was chatting and laughing with her friends, was blocked. She could only turn her head to look at this person. She saw a foreign man with a tall nose and deep, large eyes. His hair was curly and almost reached his shoulders. He wasn't ugly, but there was an unerasable viciousness in his expression. "Who are you? Why are you blocking our path?" Michaela thought that he might be a student from abroad who came to study, so she asked him if he understood her. In the end, not only did this man understand, but he could also speak. "Michaela, you look different." This man's words made people confused. Michaela's classmates looked at each other in confusion. They were all guessing that this might be the person who wanted to date Michaela. After all, this matter was really too common. Ever since Michaela entered the school, the boys in the school had all gone crazy. Each and every one of them saw Michaela as their dream girl. Unfortunately, no one succeeded in taking her on a date. The boys who were rejected didn't dare to get angry. After all, everyone in school knew about Harry's reputation. The man in front of them now, in the eyes of the others, was just another one of her pursuers. However, his words were too crazy, making people unable to understand the situation. She quickly understood the meaning of the man's words. Combined with her previous experience of being kidnapped and the person in charge of kidnapping, Michaela was shocked. Unconsciously, she took a step back and asked with a frown, "Who exactly are you?" The man laughed and said very proudly, "I'm the Prince of Egypt, Henderson, your fiancé." Michaela's friends were all stunned. They never thought that Michaela had a fiancé. Her friends were shocked once again, and their jaws almost dropped to the ground. When they looked at Henderson, they didn't know what to think. Although he was a bit handsome, he was still very ordinary looking. They fantasized about Prince Charming, who would fall in love with girls like them. Michaela's friends expressed their dissatisfaction with her. However, they didn't see the deep wariness in Michaela's eyes. The surrounding guards, after knowing the true identity of Henderson, were prepared to fight someone with a lot of power. They surrounded Michaela and separated her from Henderson. After confirming that Michaela was safe, the other guards began to surround Henderson, making sure he couldn't escape. If they could capture Henderson and deliver him to Harry, they'd be handsomely rewarded. The guards wanted to make a move. However, it was obvious that Henderson didn't come alone. Michaela's guards moved, and a large group of seemingly elite guards appeared behind Henderson, and there were more of Henderson's guards as compared to the Wolf Guard. However, Michaela didn't panic. Although the expressions of the guards around her were serious, no one was nervous, and they were all calm. Because this was their territory, the school was just behind them. In order to protect his sister, Harry arranged a total of 200 guards to stay around the school. Michaela seemed to be in trouble, but Henderson seemed to have come with ill intentions. Michaela stayed confident. She had just left the school and could easily run back. However, there were over 1,000 people in the school, but nothing would happen in such a public area. As for the 100 or so guards by Michaela's side, they were confident that they would be able to take on Henderson's men. Thus, they didn't panic at all. Henderson was in a disadvantageous position. Henderson was arrogant, and it was incredibly bold of him to show himself in Harry's territory, especially considering that he had just kidnapped Michaela and locked her away on a submarine. Had Harry known Henderson was here, the university would be swarmed with every asset Harry could muster. It was easy for him to expose his identity and whereabouts now, but it would be difficult for him to leave. It depended on whether Harry wanted him to leave or not. Harry had no intention of letting him leave, and he had even been planning all kinds of seditious torture for Henderson. Michaela was the daughter of a rich family. Michaela looked into Henderson's eyes as if she wanted to kill him. Michaela's guards were giving off the same expression, and they were even facing off against Henderson's guards. Everyone expressed their confusion. "What fiancé? Don't think so highly of yourself. I didn't agree to the marriage," Michaela said angrily. Her friends began to gossip when they heard Michaela's strict and indignant words. Henderson laughed unyieldingly. "I'm afraid this is not up to you. You'll come around to the idea, eventually." When Michaela's friends heard Henderson's words, they were unhappy. The others immediately rolled their eyes and cursed. "Are you crazy? What do you mean by this? Sending someone to kidnap me once didn't work. Are you going to do it yourself?" Michaela shouted angrily. What? He was the one who kidnapped you?" a student yelled. Her friends were stunned once again. Henderson didn't care about the people around him who were shouting. He just stared at Michaela and said, "Michaela, what are you doing?" "Yes, I came to find you because I wanted to bring you back." "You're delusional," Michaela said. "You don't have to resist like this. Since I'm here, no one can stop me from taking you away." Henderson continued to speak in a cold tone. Michaela was too lazy to reply. However, the guard at the side couldn't stand it any longer and said coldly, "You want to take away Michaela? Then you'll have to go through us." Michaela's guards couldn't wait to teach this guy a lesson. Each one of them was rubbing their fists in excitement. After all, to be able to capture Henderson and offer him to Harry would be great, and they'd probably be rewarded handsomely. Henderson knew that Egypt was tens of thousands of miles away from here, and Harry had the upper hand here. Henderson wouldn't have been so arrogant as to take the initiative to provoke Harry today. However, even so, Henderson stood there without moving. On the school side, the reinforcements had already arrived at the intersection in front of them. The guards that appeared on Henderson's side numbered at least 200 people. When the school heard that Michaela had come into trouble, they all moved out. 2,000 people had come to Michaela's aid. After all, their duty in the school's security department was to protect Michaela. Therefore, the moment they received news that Michaela had encountered trouble outside, the guards that Harry had arranged for all moved out without hesitation. These people were the elites of the Wolf Guard. Harry had chosen the best of the best. It was a pleasant surprise for these people that they were able to run into trouble right at the front gate. When they found out that the person who had come looking for trouble was the mastermind behind Michaela's kidnapping, these elite guards became even more excited. They had been unable to train as hard as they normally could. They were stuck babysitting Michaela while she went to school. They weren't unhappy with their assignment. They took pride in their work. Michaela was Harry's only living relative, and they knew how important she was and would do anything to keep her safe. Seeing that the guy who wanted to kidnap Michaela had come straight to them with all of his guards was like watching a kid in a candy store. They were all itching to beat up the other guards and take Henderson to Harry. Even though they were excited, they remained calm and focused. They knew that they could celebrate later. Right now, they needed to do their best to make sure Michaela made it home safe, and the dirtbag in front of her learned who he was messing with. However, what was surprising was that even after seeing Harry's large group of guards that had arrived to help, Henderson still didn't panic at all. He had a calm and composed look on his face. The guards who were protecting Michaela saw that their reinforcements had arrived, and their hearts calmed down. "Don't even think about leaving, Henderson. Hands on your head and squat to the ground. Whoever dares to disobey will be killed." The other guards also began to shout. Surrendering might save the lives of his men. If he wanted to put up some resistance, he was destined to be completely wiped out by the Wolf Guard. However, to everyone's surprise, regardless of whether it was Henderson or the guards behind him, they still remained calm and composed in the face of Harry's men. Furthermore, it wasn't only that. Harry's guards could sense that something was wrong with the people that Henderson had brought with him. As for what exactly was wrong, the guards couldn't tell. They could only rely on their instincts to stay alert. "Everyone, be careful! These people aren't normal!" Some of the guards didn't seem to believe their intuition. Henderson, who had been silent all this time, laughed wildly. "I thought that Harry's men were all the best of the best. But now, it seems like this is all there is to it. They're all trash that needs to be taken to the dump." Such mockery instantly ignited the fury of the Wolfguard elites. The Wolfguard could no longer hold themselves back. A portion of them guarded Michaela, while the rest rushed toward Henderson. From their point of view, in this world, other than the bionic humans that Harry made, no one could stop the Wolfguard's charge. In just one round, they could finish the fight. It wouldn't take long for them to get rid of Henderson and the others. However, the situation didn't develop in the direction that everyone was thinking about. They only saw that Henderson and the rest of his men were still standing in the same spot without moving. None of them moved even half a step, but the expressions on their faces quickly changed. The originally expressionless faces of Henderson's guards were now replaced with terrifying and malevolent smiles. The veins on their temples and necks bulged, and in the blink of an eye, their bodies swelled up like balloons. The muscles all over their bodies swelled up, even their clothes were torn. Such a shocking change stunned the Wolfguard. They subconsciously stopped their charge. It wasn't that these elite guards were afraid, but they subconsciously reacted like this when facing an unknown adversary. They didn't understand what was going on. The Wolfguard stopped and started discussing in surprise. Faced with the unknown, they had to figure out what the enemy was capable of. As for the 200 men of Henderson, they had all exploded, which surprised and puzzled the Wolfguard. At the same time, Michaela's classmates also cried out in surprise. Each and every one of them shyly covered their eyes with their hands and even complained. "Michaela, are your fiancé's men aliens?" one girl shouted. Michaela helplessly explained, "I already said that this guy is not my fiancé," Michaela said in disdain. "I feel disgusted when I see him." While they were still in the mood to chit-chat, the situation in front of them had already changed. After Henderson's men exploded out of their shirts, they didn't wait for the Wolfguard to attack again. Instead, they took the initiative to launch a counterattack. This kind of operation was a little confusing. It was only 200 people, but it was like facing 2,000. Even if these people were all abnormally strong, and fighting 10 of them at the same time, but the Wolfguard still had their tricks. Harry wouldn't leave his greatest weapon in storage when he could use them to protect his sister. Right now, the ones protecting Michaela were 20 bionic humans that disguised themselves as ordinary Wolfguards. Harry believed that with the bionic humans protecting his sister, no one would be able to hurt her. This was also the source of the Wolfguard's confidence. With the bionic humans as their trump card, they would be able to protect Michaela from anything. These guards could attack Henderson without any worries. "Capture Henderson alive!" Everyone from the Wolfguard shouted in unison. For a moment, their morale was as high as it had ever been. In the blink of an eye, both sides were engaged in a chaotic battle. Such a huge commotion had scared the shops on both sides of the street to shut their doors. They were afraid of being dragged into the fighting. All the normal pedestrians had run in fear at the growing tension. The clamor of the chaotic battle shook the earth, scaring Michaela's little friends to scream continuously. They nervously surrounded Michaela and were all trying to persuade her to quickly leave. At this moment, Harry had received news from the university. "Harry, Henderson has appeared near Michaela's school. He's currently confronting the guards," June urgently reported. "Henderson? That prince from Egypt? He's here in my territory?" Harry was both angry and happy. He was angry because this man had the guts to come to his home turf. Obviously, he was mocking Harry. What he was happy about was that Harry was just worrying about not having a chance to take revenge, but this guy came to him on his own accord. "Then let the Wolfguard capture him for me," Harry said. "The order has been given. I think they've caught him by now," June said faintly. Even she didn't think too much about it. She felt that catching Henderson was just a small matter. 2,000 elite Wolfguards against Henderson's 200 guards? It was inevitable. "Oh, right. Where is Michaela now?" Harry asked. "Michaela's at the university, but there are 20 bionic humans protecting her. She's safe," June replied. Harry shook his head. "No, there will be chaos in the fight. Let her come back here as soon as possible." "Yes, I will inform them right away." June turned around and gave the order to get someone to escort Michaela back. But before she could finish giving the order, June's expression changed. Harry saw her flustered look and asked, "What's wrong?" "Harry, The Wolf Guard is no match for Henderson's men. They've also taken Michaela. Harry's eyes instantly widened. At this moment, he thought that he was hallucinating. Impossible. How could the Wolf Guard make such a big mistake? Furthermore, there are still 20 bionic humans left. They didn't stop them? Harry cried out involuntarily. June shook her head with a bitter expression. The bionic humans have been destroyed. Harry immediately stood up. What did you say? Even the bionic humans were defeated? Did Henderson bring his superhumans? Harry found it hard to believe that Henderson had progressed with his superhumans and that they had surpassed his own bionic humans. If his people were so powerful, then Egypt would be the next big superpower. It wouldn't be impossible for them to take down Libya in a month or less. Where is Michaela? Quickly arrange for rescue, Harry said anxiously. Harry, calm down. I'll go and arrange for rescue right away. However, it seems like sending the Wolf Guard is no longer possible. We can only rely on the bionic human army, June said. Harry frowned. Then what are we waiting for? If we delay any more, Henderson will run away with Michaela. June nodded and quickly turned around to make arrangements. Harry walked back and forth a few steps in the room. His heart was pounding in his ears. He wasn't at the university and didn't know what happened. He also didn't know how Henderson's men defeated the elite Wolf Guard and the 20 bionic humans. What exactly is going on? Harry muttered to himself, puzzled. No matter what he needed to do now was to save Michaela as soon as possible. He really didn't expect that after the failure of kidnapping Michaela on the sea last time, that Henderson would dare to run into Harry's territory and abduct Michaela right out from under his nose. He was a madman. But Henderson succeeded. This meant that he was even stronger than Harry. Harry didn't believe that a mere prince from Egypt could be this powerful. This could only mean that there was someone supporting Henderson. It must be the council who was playing tricks again. June, are you ready? I'll personally go and save Michaela. Harry pressed the communication device and asked. June replied, Harry, we've already started sending people, but it would be too dangerous for you to go there personally. We're still not able to determine the strength of the superhumans. No matter what kind of demons and devils Henderson brings with him, I have to go and meet him personally. He dared to cause trouble in front of my house. I'm going to kill him, Harry said angrily. If he wanted to save his sister, he would have to regain his reputation as well. No matter what Henderson relied on, Harry would fight him to the death today. Seal all the entrances and exits of Florida. We can't let him escape, Harry ordered again. Yes, sir. Near Michaela's school, the soul-stirring chaotic battle had already ended. The place was a mess. Countless Wolf Guard were lying on the ground in disorder. When Harry saw such heavy casualties, his heart ached. The Wolf Guard were the earliest to follow Harry. They had always been loyal and one of the foundations of Harry's empire. Now that he had suffered such a huge loss, it was impossible for Harry not to feel heartache. Although Harry now had the bionic humans, and they were much stronger than the Wolf Guard, there was still a difference between an artificial intelligence machine and a real person. At the very least, when it came to carrying out missions, the AI's flexibility was naturally lacking. The bionic humans had been torn apart by Henderson's men with their bare hands. A few of the Wolf Guard, who were relatively lightly injured, screamed in pain as they got up from the ground. What the hell were those people just now? They were not human, a guard said. The few guards that were conscious were watching as another team arrived. The Wolf Guard had a special unit in their ranks. They rarely ever fought and were used more in support and analysis positions. Team 3 was responsible for gathering and analyzing intelligence, as well as tracking and searching and the like. When Henderson stopped Michaela, the Wolf Guard from the school came to support her. Team 3 was also among them. However, they didn't enter the range of the conflict. Instead, they hid in the periphery to watch the battle. Even though the Wolf Guard was completely wiped out, Team 3 didn't show up. It wasn't that Michaela's safety wasn't in their best interest, but it was because they knew their duty needed them to be objective. Team 3 wasn't good at fighting. The number of people in the previous conflict was huge, and the Wolf Guard had the advantage. Under normal circumstances, Team 3 wouldn't need to show up, and the battle would have been won. However, this time, it went against common sense to get involved. The Wolf Guard had lost miserably, and even the bionic humans had been destroyed. This showed how powerful the enemy was. Therefore, under such circumstances, even if Team 3 stood out and tried to salvage the situation, there was nothing they could do. Relatively speaking, the most important thing was to hide in the dark and follow closely behind Henderson and the others, and to have knowledge about Michaela's position at any time. As long as they knew where Henderson had taken Michaela, they could inform Harry at any time and call for more reinforcements. This was how they did their job. At this moment, Team 3 was following behind Henderson and the others. Slowly, they arrived at a remote mountainous area in Florida. This place was desolate and uninhabited. It was a good place to hide. This is the first time Henderson has been to Florida. How could he possibly find a place like this? The members of the Squad 3 were puzzled. Isn't it obvious? Someone must have arranged it for him, another member said. It's not our people. It's most likely from the council, came a reply from a scout. The others came to a realization. The conflict between Harry and the family council was no longer a secret to the Wolf Guard. Everyone knew that Harry came from the #1 family in the world. The council wanted him dead. Therefore, this conflict was irreconcilable, and it was destined that a conflict would break out between the two. Now, Henderson had provoked Harry time and time again, and it was the council who were helping him out. They've entered the cave. Hurry up and report to Mr. Harry. If we delay it too much, Michaela might be in danger, said the member with the binoculars. I've already sent a message to him. He should be here soon. Although the location was remote, it wasn't far from the city where Michaela went to university. After Harry gathered all his men, he quickly found them according to the location signal of Team 3. This time, Harry has sent out all his men, but the main force wasn't the Wolf Guard, but thousands of bionic humans he had in storage. They rushed over in a grandiose manner and met up with Team 3. Where's Michaela? Where did she go? Harry asked impatiently. Sir, she's at the mountain in front of us. There's a cave halfway up the mountain, but the entrance is blocked by vegetation. We can't see her from here, Team 3 replied. Got it. Then let's use the special bionic humans. Harry couldn't wait any longer. After seeing the general location of the cave, he decided to start the rescue mission. The special bionic humans mentioned were a type of android that could be optically invisible. It was especially suitable to attack at a close range. Harry couldn't risk Michaela's safety with an open assault. He didn't want Henderson to have a chance to use Michaela as a hostage. Therefore, Harry had to first make sure that his sister was safe before he could carry out a direct assault. Dozens of special bionic humans immediately turned invisible and moved forward. This kind of optical invisibility wasn't perfect. From a close distance, one could still see the refraction effect of abnormal light. However, when observed from a distance, the effect was very good. Therefore, it wasn't a problem to enter the cave from here until inside the cave. Because the light became weaker, the invisibility effect of the bionic humans would also be better. Harry stood in front of the surveillance cameras of the temporary command center and looked at the synchronized images transmitted by the bionic humans. The cave was very hidden. If one didn't look carefully, one wouldn't know that there was a cave behind the dense vegetation. The bionic humans quietly entered. It was very dark. However, they weren't affected by the dim light because they had night vision installed in their eyes. This cave didn't seem to be small. It was unknown whether Henderson was confident or too arrogant. He actually didn't set up any guards at the cave entrance and allowed the bionic humans to easily enter. The inside was full of twists and turns. After walking for a long time, they finally saw the existence of light. In front of them was a naturally formed karst cave, and some basic lighting equipment had already been set up inside. Henderson and his men were inside. Michaela was being watched by a few of Henderson's men. In the middle of the cave, there were a few tables and chairs. At this moment, Henderson was talking to a few people that Harry didn't know. Because the distance was too far, Harry didn't know what they were talking about. Of course, Harry didn't care. After seeing his sister, he ordered the bionic humans to save Michaela first. After receiving the order, the bionic humans quietly approached Michaela. This process was very long because they had to prevent too much commotion from happening so as to avoid alerting Henderson and his men. These special bionic humans weren't only invisible, but they could also walk and create no sound. Their legs were tuned to have immense control over their steps, and they were built with specially designed feet that dampened most of the sound they produced. Harry looked at the monitor. He was so nervous that he didn't even dare to breathe. He was afraid that he would alert the guards and cause all his efforts to go to waste. Furthermore, as the bionic humans approached, the guards who were guarding Michaela looked at them several times. They even looked like they were trying their hardest to listen for something in the room, as if they had discovered something. After seeing nothing, the guards turned their heads back. "Henderson and the others are very unusual. They might have sensed something just now. If their senses are that sensitive, they're going to be a bigger problem than I thought. Fortunately, the bionic humans are just machines," said the members of Team 3 to Harry. "It's very unusual. By the way, did you record the fight just now?" Harry asked. What Harry wanted the most right now was to save his sister. But Harry also wanted to know why the Wolf Guard lost so miserably when they had the upper hand. However, this wasn't the time to look at the footage. In the cave, Harry wanted to know the identity of the few people who were talking to Henderson. At the same time, it wasn't the time to be concerned about this. Inside the cave, the bionic humans had already approached Michaela. Under Harry's command, they began to attack. The bionic humans didn't attack the person who was guarding Michaela first. Instead, they threw out a few flashbangs. In a dark environment like the cave, flashbangs were even more effective than usual. In an instant, the entire cave was illuminated in the vast expanse of white. Everyone inside was caught off guard and was hit by the flash bombs. Each and every one of their eyes was pierced by the intense light, and they couldn't stop crying. They simply couldn't open their eyes. Their vision was blank, and they couldn't see anything. The reason he ordered the bionic humans to throw flashbangs was because Henderson and the others had chosen to hide in the cave. They would be using night vision goggles to get around. Although it was only a few seconds of flashes, it would take no more than half a minute at most to recover some of their vision. However, this was enough for the bionic humans. After throwing the flashbangs, they immediately began to move. They directly revealed themselves and attacked the guards next to Michaela. Harry let out a long breath. The men of Henderson's weren't as powerful as Harry had imagined. Under the sneak attack of the bionic humans, they were taken out quickly. When he heard that the 2,000 men from the Wolf Guard couldn't even defeat 200 men, he thought that their opponent would be more formidable. Now, it seemed like these people might have some kind of powerful secret, but it wasn't to the point where they were invincible. The flashbang tactic was very successful. Michaela was rescued by the bionic humans. Fortunately, after Michaela was brought here by Henderson's men, her eyes were always covered, so she wasn't affected by the flashbang, and chaos suddenly filled the cave. Although Michaela couldn't see the situation around her, she was very clear in her heart that Harry had sent someone to save her. She had been very calm and didn't panic. Harry saw the bionic humans bringing Michaela out of the cave. He heaved a sigh of relief in his heart. This time, he didn't have time to worry about anything else, so he angrily ordered his men. "Everyone, attack the cave! Capture Henderson! I want to tear this moron into pieces!" Harry was clenching his teeth. It could be seen how much he hated Henderson. The bionic humans who had been hiding outside the cave immediately stood up and rushed into the cave. Harry didn't care about the people inside anymore. He ran quickly to the front of the command center to welcome Michaela. "Michaela, are you hurt? Henderson didn't do anything to you, did he?" Harry asked anxiously. He quickly took off the cloth covering Michaela's eyes. When Michaela saw Harry, she smiled. She shook her head and said, "No, you got here quickly enough. He didn't have any time at all." That's good. Harry finally let go of the dread feeling in his stomach that was making him sick. At this time, the sounds of battle coming out from the cave were getting more and more intense. Michaela suddenly thought of something and said in shock, "Henderson's men are very strange. Each of them is very powerful. They don't look like humans at all." Harry comforted her. "Don't worry, I brought all the bionic humans with me. I believe we can take them down." Harry wasn't worried at all. The terrain of this cave was simply too advantageous for Harry, who was outside. If things went bad, Harry would just blow up the cave, burying Henderson alive inside. The monitor was still broadcasting the situation inside at the same time. Harry pulled Michaela over to take a look. When he saw this, Harry frowned. It wasn't that the situation was bad. Harry's side had the advantage in the battle inside. However, the performance of Henderson's men surprised Harry. He didn't know if they'd recovered from the surprise attack or not. Their muscles had all expanded. What was even more shocking was that after this change, their strength had also increased explosively. Even under the surging tide of attacks from the bionic humans, they were still able to persist and attack. They were even still fighting back. Harry saw that the row of bionic humans at their front had only exchanged a few rounds with these people. They were directly torn apart. They were made from the hardest alloy. Under normal circumstances, even if one jumped down from tens of thousands of meters high, it wouldn't cause the same amount of damage. However, it was now torn apart by the men of Henderson with their bare hands. He finally understood how the Wolf Guard at the university, which was over 2,000 people strong, had been defeated. It was true that the Wolf Guard was an elite force, but their strength was still within the range of normal human beings. On the other hand, the strength displayed by Henderson and the others was simply terrifying. This was no longer something that could be done through rigorous training. It looked like they had taken medicine. The problem was that even if they took medicine, they wouldn't be able to reach this level of strength. Harry was very puzzled. What made him even more puzzled was that he couldn't find Henderson anymore. Not to mention Henderson, even the few people who were fighting just now had also disappeared. "Where are they? Where did they go?" Harry asked curiously. Henderson was supposed to be in the cave, but now he was gone. Harry felt strange. Although there were many people in the cave, he could still see them clearly at a glance. None of them were Henderson. Even the person who had been speaking to Henderson had disappeared. "Harry, there's a hidden passage here," a subordinate suddenly said. Harry quickly walked over and saw a huge rock at the end of the cave. There was actually an inconspicuous hole hidden behind the rock. This cave entrance was barely big enough for a person to walk through. Inside of the hole was very dark, and there was no end to it. Needless to say, Henderson must have escaped through the small hole. Harry pondered for a moment and ordered, "Chase after them." Henderson could have easily set up an ambush inside the hole. However, after thinking about it, Harry felt that this possibility was very small. One was that Henderson had come from afar and couldn't bring many people with him. Harry had lost a couple of his own men, but they could be repaired. Henderson's men were different. After making a decision, Harry brought his men and chased after him. The interior of this cave was very narrow, and the inside was full of twists and turns. It was very difficult to walk fast. While Harry was chasing him, he still had to guard against any traps laid out by Henderson. After chasing for a long time, Harry finally saw light. After walking out of the cave, he found that they'd actually come to the seaside. On the coastline not far away, a submarine was slowly sailing toward the sea. Harry hatefully punched a few times on the boulder beside him. He rushed forward slowly, but he was still a step too late. Watching Henderson get away made Harry feel very depressed. Even if Harry mobilized his own ship, it would already be too late by the time the boat was able to reach the coast. Once the submarine dove into the sea, it would be very difficult to find any trace of it. "Harry, what should we do?" one of his men asked. Without any boats or submarines of his own, Harry could only watch Henderson run away. "Let's go back and arrange funerals for the men we lost," Harry said, unwilling to give up. In the cave, the intense battle between the bionic humans and Henderson had come to an end. Many of the bionic humans had been turned into scrap, so Harry naturally couldn't just leave them here. He would bring them back to reorganize and assemble them. As for the men that Henderson had abandoned, Harry had to pay attention to them as well. These people were very strange. They seemed to have some strange abilities. Therefore, Harry wanted to bring them back to study them properly and figure out how these special abilities came about. Only after figuring out the abilities of these people would Harry be able to choose a better strategy to deal with the enemy. The next time he encountered them, he would be able to exploit their weaknesses, if they had any. This was to prevent the tragedy of wiping out 2,000 of the Wolf Guard like last time. Harry brought his men back to the island, but he didn't return to the manor. Instead, he went straight to the Research Institute and watched the video taken by Team 3. The video of the battle outside the cave was handed over to Callie, Stephen, and the others in the Research Institute. Harry believed that no matter how big of a secret Henderson had, the geniuses at the Research Institute would be able to figure it out. Furthermore, what Harry brought wasn't only a recorded video, but a few samples. However, what made people feel strange was that in the Research Institute, no matter how much coercion and bribes they used on their captives, it wouldn't persuade them. These people were no longer in their berserker state. They were still afraid of Harry's threats, but no matter what, none of them were showing any signs of going berserk again. This puzzled everyone. If it wasn't for the video, they would have thought that what they saw was just an illusion. However, that extremely violent state was still fresh in Harry's and the others' minds. "What's going on?" Harry asked curiously. Callie, who had collected some blood and muscle samples, operated on various analytical instruments under the microscope. She shook her head and expressed a different opinion. "I don't think so. Their berserker state left no traces. They can't go back into that state. Maybe they lack the conditions to trigger it." "What do they lack? Can we make sure it doesn't happen?" Harry asked. Callie shook her head again. "It's hard to say now. Maybe it's some kind of medicine, or maybe it's some electronic signal." Speaking of the electronic signal, Stephen became alert. "Using electronic signals to stimulate the human body to produce that kind of extreme violent state? Is that possible?" Stephen was very confused. Callie said with certainty, "It's very likely. The human body uses electric signals all the time. Modifying the muscles to grow and expand with a signal is not as far-fetched as it seems." Stephen couldn't wait to respond. "So, it's my turn to be good at what I'm good at. If it's really produced by electric signals, I'll find it." Harry was surprised. "You can find the signal?" Stephen was very confident. "Trust me, as long as this guess is correct, then I'll be able to find it." Harry nodded. "All right, then I'll leave it to you. Find it as soon as possible." Stephen patted his chest and promised, "Don't worry about me. It won't take me long. Maybe I can finish in one day." Although Harry expressed his doubt, he could only believe that Stephen could do it. Cracking the secrets of these super soldiers is not something that can be done in a short time. Although Stephen had confidently said that he could do it in a day or two, Harry didn't believe it at all. Therefore, he didn't expect to be able to solve the secret immediately. He handed all the work to the Research Institute. Harry returned to the manor. After hearing the news of Henderson bringing people to Florida and causing a huge ruckus, Sean took the initiative to look for him. After Harry returned to the manor, Sean was already waiting for him. "Harry, I heard that Henderson was in Florida?" Sean asked with concern. Everything that had just happened from the conflict had only just now been settled. Sean didn't know the specifics of the situation, and Harry's men wouldn't tell him either. Therefore, he only knew that Henderson had come. He didn't know anything else, so he could only ask Harry about it. Harry nodded. "Yes, this guy has guts. He dared to come here and cause trouble." Speaking of which, Harry gnashed his teeth in hatred. "Then where is he?" Sure enough, Harry said angrily, "He ran away." This is such a pity." Sean sighed, not because he was gloating, but because he truly felt that it was a pity. Henderson was currently a great enemy. He had come here on his own accord. As Harry's ally, Sean naturally felt the same. He felt that it was a great pity. However, he was still very puzzled. This was Harry's base camp. All of his strength was concentrated here. There were countless guards here. How could they let someone escape? He thought. Sean subconsciously felt that something was amiss and couldn't help but ask, "Harry, how was he able to escape?" He didn't want to ridicule Harry, but he didn't understand the situation. He simply wanted to understand what had happened. Harry didn't hide it from him. He sighed and told him about the conflict in the cave. In order not to make Sean think that he was lying, he took out the recording and played it for him to see. "See, the people that Henderson brought are too strange. I have to understand what's going on." As Harry spoke, he remembered something and said, "By the way, haven't you been providing support to Libya? Have you heard of anything like this? Has Egypt used these kind of people before?" Sean watched the video and was stunned. After hearing Harry's question, he said after a long time, "Absolutely not. I'm sure of it." Harry nodded. "That's strange. These people couldn't have come from nowhere. If Egypt didn't have them, then it must have been from some other major powers." Speaking up to this point, it was already very clear. Since these special guards weren't from Egypt, then they must have been given to Henderson by the Council. With this, Harry's heart became serious. Previously, he felt that he could conquer the world with the help of the bionic humans. However, only today did he realize that, as expected from the Council, they actually hid such a powerful force in private. Today, Henderson had only brought 200 special guards with him. However, Harry was sure that since the Council could provide 200 people to Egypt, there would only be more, no less. When he thought of the tens of thousands of people who had activated Berserk mode charging towards him, the sense of security in Harry's heart plummeted. He had already calculated the situation of the previous battle. 200 of these special guards were fighting against 1,000 bionic humans. They needed 3 bionic humans to exchange for such a special guard. That was why Harry was worried that if the Council had even more special guards, Harry wouldn't last a week if they chose to attack now. "Harry, today's matter is really worrying. Previously, we had discussed how to help Libya and aggravate the conflict with Egypt. I think we should delay it for a while," Sean said after a discussion. He didn't mean to ask Harry to stop the proxy war. Instead, after seeing the powerful strength of these special guards, he was a little afraid. The strength of Libya was weak to begin with. If there were such special guards in Egypt, what was the point of fighting if they were equipped with stronger weapons? It would be fine as long as he went home and washed his neck, waiting for his death. Right now, the most important thing wasn't to start a proxy war, but to figure out what was going on. There were no such guards in Egypt. If there were, how many people were there exactly? Did these people have any weaknesses? Harry expressed his agreement. "Yes, we need to pause for a while. But you don't have to worry. My research institute is making the best use of our time to study these strange guards. We'll talk about it after we get the specific information." After sending Sean away, a few days passed. There was news from the research institute. Stephen had still not figured out how these special guards were triggered. Callie, on the other hand, had a preliminary research result. Harry hurriedly came to the research institute and asked, "What did you discover? Tell me quickly." Callie unhurriedly pushed out a sample prisoner that was tied to the instrument. She pointed to some data on the analyzer and said, "There is good news." Harry was even happier. "Really? What's the good news?" "The berserk state these people are in is restricted." Following Callie's explanation, Harry gradually understood. He had thought too much of these people before. Activating that kind of berserk mode of battle wasn't unlimited. It had a time limit. The longest period of time was no more than half an hour. Furthermore, after activating it, there would be no limit to the amount of time required to activate it. Once the time was up, these people would fall into a very weak state. If they wanted to activate the berserk state again, it would be impossible for them to do so within a short period of time. They would need to rest for a period of time, or rather, recover. This way, the pressure in Harry's heart would be greatly reduced. Harry felt relieved in his heart. He thought to himself, "That's true. How could such an abnormal ability be used casually? There must be some restrictions." Now that he had figured it out, it was equivalent to grasping a part of the enemy's weakness. Harry had a countermeasure. The enemy wasn't as terrifying as he had imagined. He still had a chance of winning. Harry was studying the enemy's weakness, and the council was busy themselves. Harry was their target. This time, they had supported Henderson and provided him with the super soldiers. This was a secret plan that the council had been working on for more than 10 years. In an unknown corner of the world, the council had built a huge laboratory, specially conducting research on some kind of drug, injecting it into the human body and making them stronger. Their research had been progressing very slowly, but recently, they had made a breakthrough. They successfully developed a medicine that could be used in actual combat. Through thousands of physical tests, the council had been able to make people superhuman. This was supposed to be the deciding factor for the Council to defeat Harry. The emergence of the bionic humans had caused the members of the Council to worry that Harry would attack before the Council could amass enough of a force of superhumans to be able to defend themselves. In the beginning, the Council wanted to steal Harry's bionic human technology and develop it for themselves. But after they failed to steal it, the Council wouldn't get another chance. They had to produce their superhuman serum in mass quantities. Everyone knew that a great battle would break out sooner or later. However, before their official battle, they had to figure out whether Harry's bionic humans were as powerful as their super soldiers. They handed over 200 super soldiers to Henderson for him to test their strength. They wanted him to go to Florida and provoke Harry. The results were satisfactory for the Council. The super soldiers were very powerful. Harry had suffered a lot of losses from this battle. Although Henderson is still defeated by Harry in the end, the Council had achieved its objective. They tested the strength of both sides. The loss of super soldiers didn't matter to the Council. This was because they had already achieved mass production of super soldiers. No matter how much they lost, they would be replenished in no time. The super soldier plan is going very well. We should increase our investment in the next steps of the plan and fully support mass production. After the members of the Council saw the conflict scene, they said with satisfaction, "There are still many problems with this first generation of super soldiers. Their shortcomings are obvious. It's easy to cause more problems if we hurry to mass produce them, right?" Someone questioned. When the super soldiers went berserk, they were indeed very strong, but the duration of the serum was too short. "Ha! They were originally mass-produced as cannon fodder. Why should we care?" another man asked. The Council was laughing as if they had seen victory at hand. They had eliminated Harry, the biggest threat to their power. Harry sat and was deep in thought. After figuring out the weakness of the super soldiers, he didn't feel very relaxed. The key was that he didn't know how many of these super soldiers the Council had made. Harry didn't have enough confidence to battle with the super soldiers head-on. This was because the bionic humans couldn't defeat the super soldiers who had gone berserk. If he wanted to win, he had to outnumber the super soldiers by at least 4 times the manpower. Harry couldn't accept such an outcome. He had to find people from the Research Institute to discuss countermeasures. After Callie heard Harry's distress, she thought for a moment and said, "Do you remember what I said before? The plan to increase the combat strength of the Wolf Guard?" Harry had long forgotten about it. He shook his head blankly and said, "What plan? Did you tell me about it?" Callie nodded. "Considering the difference in strength between the bionic humans and the Wolf Guard," she said, "I made an exoskeleton armor project. Now I have a rough idea of how to implement it." Harry frowned. "Exoskeleton armor? Can it withstand the attacks from the super soldiers?" In terms of overall strength, it's just barely enough to compete," Callie said. After saying that, she motioned for a tech to roll over a tall cabinet. When Harry opened this 2-meter-tall metal cabinet, he saw a sleek suit of armor inside. Harry said in shock, "This is the exoskeleton armor you were talking about?" Callie nodded and said, "Yes, this is the prototype that was just made. It's completely sealed, and it has a built-in energy system." Stephen added on from the side, "In fact, even if there is no one inside, with the AI system, it can move and fight on its own." Harry was already extremely shocked. Callie continued, "Actually, it's not necessarily only supposed to be worn by the Wolf Guard. The bionic humans can use it." Harry thought the combination of the bionic humans and the exoskeleton armor was genius. Harry expressed his heartfelt admiration. The bionic human's combat ability was already powerful enough. With the addition of the exoskeleton armor, the combination of the two would be able to multiply their strength and speed. If he wanted to mass-produce the suit, it was something that could be done at any time. As for how many, Harry already knew in his heart. The more, the better. In any case, he wasn't short of money. "Then let's start production. Open up all production lines." However, there was more than one surprise. After Harry saw the new exoskeleton armor, Callie brought Harry to another laboratory. The space here was even more spacious. There were many drones of various sizes in the laboratory, as well as unmanned vehicles. Harry looked around and asked, "What are these for?" Callie said, "I heard that you're going to support Libya and indirectly fight with Egypt, so I casually made some support vehicles." Harry's eyes lit up. He felt that Callie really knew him too well. Supporting Libya was necessary to keep the council from gaining too much of an advantage. Because Henderson had come knocking on his door, if Harry didn't teach him a lesson, people would think that he was a pushover. However, it was important to do more than just pay Libya to fight in the proxy war. Harry had to make sure that their efforts weren't wasted. What Libya needed the most right now was military support. These drones and unmanned combat vehicles were very suitable for the job. After all, these were relatively cheap, and the speed of mass production was fast. Egypt would have no choice but to respond with their own military and couldn't go after Harry in the meantime. Harry said with great joy, "Great, I was just worrying about this matter, so let's mass produce as much as we can." Because the sales of the products had been increasing, Harry's superfactory had been expanding its production capacity. Because of this expansion, it was easy to manufacture these drones. The assembly line was ready, and the relevant materials and parts could be put into production immediately after the production lines were in place. Today, they had prepared enough materials. Tomorrow, tens of thousands of finished products will appear. However, this wasn't the only good news. Harry, who had left the research institute, received a call from Buddy.
"Harry, I have a message for you."
Buddy was still very careful on the phone. There was a little excitement in his voice. Ever since Harry gave his family the rights to sell his fantasy products, the decline Buddy's family had been experiencing had stopped. Instead, they started to bounce back in a short period of time. "What's the news?" Harry frowned. He thought that something had happened at the shipyard. Buddy said, "We made a carrier for a client, and he paid the deposit, but hasn't paid since, and we can't contact him or his team." Harry raised his eyebrows. "Oh, then what about the ship?" Buddy said, "The ship is finished. Because the client gave up on the order, we're looking for a new buyer. Do you want it?" Harry said without thinking, "Yes, why wouldn't I?" Without even asking for the price and tonnage, Harry directly decided to buy the ship. This was because this ship wasn't something most people could buy or afford. The ship had many comprehensive functions and could be used in many areas. Not only could it transport personnel and equipment, but it was perfectly suited for carrying planes and helicopters that could be deployed at sea. This carrier would be the start of Harry's naval power. Furthermore, in order to provide support to Libya, Harry had to have his own ship to transport resources. It wasn't safe to rent other people's ships. With this carrier, Harry's transportation problem was solved. The most important thing was that this ship was already built, so he didn't need to wait. "Drive the ship to me, immediately. How much money do you need? I'll get someone to transfer the funds to you," Harry said. Buddy quickly smiled.
"Harry, I can transport it over to your island in no time. I can't ask any money from you. We're friends, after all. The $10 billion cost is nothing."
Of course, Buddy was being polite. He needed the money, and Harry knew it. Harry wired the $10 billion to Buddy once he hung up the phone. In the future, he still had to count on Buddy's family shipyard to build boats. If they went out of business, Harry would be crushed by the council in no time. Very soon, Buddy sent the boat over in a few days. At the port, Harry looked at the large carrier and was a little excited for a moment. Adding the submarine that Harry had captured, Harry had 2 ships in his fleet. Although the submarine was old, it was currently being modified. He removed the old engine and control equipment and replaced them with super batteries and a new AI terminal. "Harry, these 2 new ships still don't have names," June said. Harry nodded and thought for a moment. "This is a new beginning. Then let's call it Navigator and Dawn." The carrier was the Navigator, and the submarine was Dawn. These 2 ships were the starting point of Harry's new strength, and they represented Harry's expectations. The new ship was in position, and they couldn't just sit there and do nothing. The carrier needed some upgrades as well. When everything was ready, Harry called Sean over.
Harry, your ship is ready?
Sean already knew what Harry was preparing for. The operation to support Libya can begin now. I will provide unmanned drones, as well as transport ships. The escort will require the help of the royal family, Harry said. No problem. We're allies after all. We won't hesitate to escort them, Sean immediately said. There are over 100 drones on the carrier with different specializations. Once they're in place, we can start the attacks, Harry instructed. Sean promised. We're going to show them a fight they won't forget. Harry's request was carried out very quickly by Sean. Egypt had been suppressing Libya in many ways, with sanctions and tariffs that were bleeding the country dry. Although it wanted to help, they were powerless to change the situation. With Harry's support, they could fight back. Sean took a special plane to the royal family on the same day and reported that he would be assisting Harry. After the royal family heard the report, they were all unable to contain their joy. They had been unable to help Libya with its strife with Egypt. Their forces were needed elsewhere, and the money they sent was almost entirely wasted as it was used to keep the Libyan government from faltering on its debt. However, once the royal family gave up on Libya and allowed Egypt to annex it, the reputation of the royal family would drop to the lowest it had ever been. Fortunately, there was always a way out. Just as everyone thought that it was only a matter of time before Libya was annexed, Harry's reinforcements had arrived. The people of the royal family in Libya had to thank Harry. Everyone, don't worry. The support Harry is giving us will help us to turn the tide. This first batch of unmanned drones is enough to support a small-scale battle, Sean said to everyone. When they heard his words, the eyes of the royal family lit up. What? Harry's reinforcements are drones? The man shouted. Sean said steadily, Yes, and they're built by the greatest minds in the world. Sean was now full of confidence in Harry's products, even though he didn't know how powerful Harry's equipment was. Sean, what's the price for Harry's equipment? The man continued. Can you sell some to us? A woman asked. They needed this kind of equipment too. This was because the royal family had never been short of money, and they had used their wealth to maintain the rule. The problem began decades after the royal family came to power and their enemies were amassing weapons. The royal family's technology just couldn't compete, and the market for buying new military tech was becoming more stringent. So now, they could only rely on unmanned drones to fight a war. However, although the royal family was rich, there were only a few manufacturers that made these drones, and they weren't selling. Now, after hearing that Harry had made hundreds of drones so quickly, the royal family couldn't sit still anymore. They wanted a partner that didn't have strict requirements, and Harry happened to be one of their newest partners. They were now allies, and Harry was very easy to talk to. As long as they firmly stood on Harry's side, Harry would give them the support they needed. Sean, return to Harry immediately and ask him about the price and performance of these drones. If suitable, we will buy them in large quantities, the man commanded. Yes, if possible, it would be best to buy the production line as well. The price is negotiable, the woman said. Sean knew the situation was on his side, so he immediately promised. I'll go back now. I must make Harry sell the drones to us as well. In fact, he didn't think there was any problem with this. In order to deal with Egypt, Harry could provide assistance for free. Sean once again boarded his private plane and flew back to Florida. Harry didn't expect him to return so soon. He asked curiously, Why did you come back? Is there a problem? There is a problem. The royal family wants me to ask you if you can sell us your unmanned drones, Sean asked. Harry didn't hesitate at all and said directly, No problem. How much do you want? Sean blinked his eyes. He didn't expect Harry to be so straightforward. The more the better. It would be best if you sell us a few production lines. Harry shook his head. I can't do that. Not that I don't want to. The production lines have to be here because they're connected to my artificial intelligence, and it runs the whole process. If I sold you the lines, it would be worthless to you without the AI. Artificial Intelligence X was one of Harry's trump cards. If he sold the production line to the royal family, he would definitely have to copy X. Harry couldn't let one of his most prized possessions fall into anyone else's hands. Harry didn't dare to give his trump card to Sean. This would give the council another way to steal the technology. Although Harry produced unmanned drones, they still needed to support Libya's side. However, since Sean had come looking to buy some, Harry was willing to sell some to him. These unmanned drones weren't integral to Harry's business or safety. He could sell them to interested buyers and make a lot of money from them. Furthermore, the royal family didn't have much in the way of advanced military strength. Relying on this equipment could make them a major player again. Being an ally with Harry was starting to become the best decision the royal family ever made. Since you guys want it, I'll sell it to you. Do you want to see the actual combat capabilities of these drones? Harry said. Sean wanted nothing less. He wanted to buy Harry's equipment to increase his own strength. Immediately, the two of them arrived at a secret place on Reflecting Moon Island. Although the Reflecting Moon Island had been left unchanged, a small part of the island was remade. Because the island was so big, the area Harry had built on was comparably small. Most of the island was still uninhabited. The two of them arrived at a temporary location. There were a few activity rooms here, and they were equipped with an unmanned command device. Harry nodded at the people in the room, and then he saw the operators begin to operate the device. The operation process was actually not complicated. It was just like playing an online game. Most of the complicated movements were handled by the artificial intelligence, and the rest were manually operated. Outside the wooden room, there was a small airport. There were a few different models of drones and a few unmanned cars parked there. Sean cared about drones the most. Back home, the terrain was flat, and one could see everything at a glance. Unmanned cars weren't all that useful. However, drones were ideal for acquiring information and carrying out missions. A few drones took off into the sky under the control of personnel and quickly disappeared into the horizon. Through the remote control connection, Sean could see the view captured by the drone's cameras. Flying from one side of Reflecting Moon Island to over 100 kilometers away on the sea took about 10 minutes. There were already targets set by Harry on the surface of the sea. After discovering the target, the drone began to attack. They saw a few missiles shoot out first and accurately hit the target. Then a few tongues of flame swept past, and the targets exploded under the attack. Sean was amazed by the destructive power as well as the drone's accuracy. Sean was very excited. At the very least, it strengthened his confidence in buying these drones. "Harry, these drones of yours, I want them all," Sean said excitedly. Harry nodded. "Sure, you've seen the performance. They're the best. We can fight wherever we want. We don't have to worry about the loss of life." "Yeah, I've never been able to rely on my own men. They're too cowardly. With these drones, we could be unstoppable," Sean said in embarrassment. "Harry, I wonder, how much do you want for the drones?" Sean asked. Sean had a lot of money to his name, but he had never been in the habit of just buying something without knowing how much he was going to be paying for it. Of course, based on their current relationship with Harry, he didn't think that Harry would set a high price to scam him. Furthermore, Harry didn't really care about money. As expected, Harry said, "Since we're allies, of course, we have to help each other. I can give you 100 drones of various models for free first. When you feel they are as useful as I've advertised, you can buy them again, and we can negotiate a price." Sean said happily, "Harry, you're too generous. I cannot accept such a gift for free. We're all friends. I promise it is no problem for me for you to take this first batch. As for what the price will be in the future, you can buy a small drone for $5 million per unit, $10 million for a medium-sized drone, and $20 million for a large drone. This price is not unfair to you, right?" Harry said. Sean shook his head like a rattledrum. "This price is too reasonable. Harry, you're so good to us." Sean wasn't being polite to Harry. He sincerely felt that Harry was a good friend. More importantly, Harry didn't have any additional terms. He wasn't in the business of making any backhanded deals. As expected, forming an alliance with Harry was the best thing that the royal family did since their beginning. Sean was secretly glad that he could buy a large amount of equipment from Harry. The royal family could hold their heads high in the future. It was a pity that they couldn't buy the production line. Otherwise, it would have been even better. However, Sean didn't blame Harry. The production line was the core of Harry's business. It was reasonable that Harry didn't sell it. Even if Harry was willing to hand it over, the royal family might not dare to take it, because once they had the production line, perhaps the council would list the royal family as their new main enemy. The first thing they would do was to set up a fighting force and destroy the royal family. "Harry, 100 units is really too little. Can you sell us 1,000 units first?" Sean asked. Harry waved his hand and said, "I would be happy to. The problem is, I just can't make them that fast. Let's stick with 100 for now, and I'll be happy to sell you the rest as I make them." Harry knew it was pretty easy to increase the number of production lines. However, with the perfect foundation of the industrial island, it was only a matter of a word for Harry to increase the number of production lines. Seeing that Sean's mind was full of drones, Harry knew that these things would be very popular. After all, there was no need for people to personally fight. Sitting at the back, drinking coffee and pressing a few buttons, sounded like the easiest way to fight a battle. Even the Wolf Guard were eager to get these drones in their arsenal. They were all battle-hardened people and loved a good fight, but they couldn't pass up the opportunity to sit back and not risk their own lives. Nowadays, people are still the most valuable asset in a war. The equipment was only produced on the assembly line. Even if it was destroyed, it was only a loss of some money. It was just that Harry's current industry chain had already been perfected, and the industrial island was continuously producing all kinds of popular products. There were still many agents outside helping Harry sell his products, and the profits earned every day were astronomical. Harry couldn't spend the money faster than it was coming in if he tried. That didn't stop him from spending, though. Receiving Harry's instructions, the industrial island quickly began the expansion plan for the new product lines. Since Harry had integrated AI into the factory, he had expanded his production capabilities. The AI had found a way to use the already assembled production lines to build an exact copy of the production line. When it expanded like this, the island could be covered in one big factory in no time at all. Harry knew that the AI could get out of hand if he wasn't clear with his orders. In just a few days, the original production line that made the unmanned drones had increased to 10 production lines, and it was still growing. Harry understood that if he wanted to go against the council, it wasn't enough just to rely on elite forces like the Wolf Guard. He needed to obtain a large number of low-level combat units, which were commonly known as cannon fodder. Drones and unmanned vehicles were the most suitable cannon fodder. Harry's most elite force was the bionic humans. Unfortunately, the bionic humans were produced on the assembly line. However, due to its complex structure and high production cost, it was impossible to produce it infinitely. No matter how rich Harry was, resources and spare parts were limited. It was impossible to acquire them at any time. This kind of equipment, like the drones, was relatively easy to manufacture, and its structure was simple and easy to maintain. More importantly, the cost of building it was cheap and required far fewer components than the bionic humans. The speed of making it was fast. It was simply a natural fit for Harry's needs. Once they started manufacturing with every production line, Harry could make almost an unlimited number of drones and outman any opponent. Of course, Harry was still at the beginning. Facing such a huge organization like the Council, Harry needed some time to develop his resources. Therefore, he couldn't afford to be reckless now. He had to stay calm. It was necessary for him to spread out some of his power to support Libya and reduce the power of the Council. Harry was busy producing drones and maintaining his production lines, but John was even more proactive than Harry. During this period of time, he had not been idle. Because of Harry's equipment support, the royal family gained some confidence. They had participated in a few operations to understand the grudges they had accumulated in the past and had won all of them. It was rare for them to be able to hold their heads high. This situation instantly made the whole world look at this royal family with awe. They had rarely won an engagement and were slowly losing territory to rebels and other independent groups. But recently, the royal family was taking back all of their lands. After fighting several battles in a row, their victory was almost assured. There was no wall in this world that was impenetrable. The reason why the royal family suddenly became so powerful was because of the drones. Everyone soon saw the footage of the drones in action. The royal family obtained a large batch of unmanned drones. Most of the time, the opponents of the royal family had yet to figure out the situation before they were blasted into the sky. The performance of the drones of the royal family this time was too strong. All kinds of explosions rained down like rain. After figuring out the reason, they knew that the royal family had found a new weapon. Some of the other major powers couldn't sit still anymore, especially those who were on good terms with the royal family. They had nothing as advanced as these drones. They really wanted to know where the royal family got their equipment from. Recently, Sean had been dealing with these people who came to inquire about information. Originally, Harry didn't want to complicate things. After all, he had made these drones to deal with the council. He didn't want to sell it as a product. But a few days later, even more shocking news spread throughout the world. Libya actually had these drones as well, and it changed the situation between them and Egypt. They had actually destroyed an entire division of land forces in Egypt. If it wasn't for the protection of the royal family, they would have been taken over long ago. However, they were able to turn the tables. This was simply unbelievable. When many people found out that it was the other countries that had the same unmanned drones, the other powers became even more jealous. They were all well aware that this kind of advanced equipment wasn't something that could be made by Libya, nor was it made by the royal family. Although the royal family was rich, it didn't have such advanced research teams and the facilities that were required to create these highly advanced drones. There must be a hidden force behind them, providing these two with this kind of advanced equipment. It wasn't long before the other countries and powerful families began to ask the royal family where they had gotten the drones. Sean was entangled in this matter because various powers had come looking for him to inquire about information. Harry really didn't want to sell these drones as a product, but Sean couldn't handle all the people coming to ask him questions. He had no choice but to come to Harry's place to ask for answers. "Harry, how is the current production of these unmanned drones? Many people are asking me where I got them from," Sean said with a bitter face. Harry said, "What? People are asking about it? What do you mean? Do people want these drones?" Sean said, "Exactly. After we used these new drones to fight a few battles, people went crazy. I've been asked around about the supplier. Fortunately, I didn't forget your instructions and didn't reveal anything." Harry nodded. "Yes, you did the right thing. I don't want anyone to know that I'm the supplier behind the drones." Harry had maintained the secrecy, but if people had the time and resources, they'd be able to figure out that Harry had been making the drones. A lot of the major powers weren't interested in finding out where the drones were coming from. They had invested too much money into their own drone programs and couldn't just drop it. Harry didn't intend to sell these drones from the beginning. He only wanted to create enough for himself to use. One reason was that he didn't want to get involved in the current weapon market so as to avoid becoming competitors or even enemies with other suppliers. He kept his identity secret. Another reason was that Harry didn't have many goods to deliver. The goods he produced were only supplied to Libya and the royal family. The rest was for his own use. Once the competition with the council intensified, it would inevitably consume a large amount of his resources. Currently, the daily production we can reach is up to 100 drones. I don't want to continue increasing this production speed since it'll only be the three of us. Harry didn't hide it from Sean and reported the actual production. In a medium-sized battle, over 100 drones were needed. Harry could produce them in one day. Sean was flabbergasted. Furthermore, these drones weren't one-time use devices. If they weren't shot down, they could be taken back and used again. To ensure deterrence, drones were better in greater numbers. Just the royal family alone had ordered 10,000 units from Harry. This was still the first batch. Moreover, they didn't only order the whole machine, they had to order 3 to 4 sets of spare parts. Therefore, even though Harry's daily production had exceeded 100, when faced with the demand of only 3 parties, it was still barely enough. However, Sean had a different opinion. He suggested to Harry, "Harry, I think this is a very good opportunity." Harry said, "What do you mean?" "Your equipment is so popular. Why don't you sell it?" Harry asked back, "Why should I sell it? I don't lack money." The money earned from other products was more than enough. Therefore, even if Harry didn't open up new industries now, his wealth was still increasing at an extremely fast speed. Harry really felt that there was no need to continue increasing his wealth in the new market for these pieces of equipment. Sean shook his head and said, "Who would complain about having too much money? Moreover, selling these drones is not just about making money. If you're willing, adding some additional conditions to the terms of the sales will be very beneficial to you." Harry nodded. He understood Sean's meaning. Relying on advanced weapons and equipment to control one or more forces and make them his pawns wasn't uncommon. It was just that Harry didn't have much ambition, and he had never thought of ruling the entire world. The only reason he forged weapons was to resist the council. Harry wasn't really interested in being the leader of the Parker family, and he had already made up his mind that after defeating the council, he would come back to the island and live peacefully with his sister. To be more precise, if the council hadn't wanted to let Harry go, they would have provoked him over and over again. Harry really hadn't planned to return to his family. He just wanted everyone to leave him alone and go about their business. Unfortunately, the members of the council didn't think so. They had always felt that Harry was a huge problem. In order to eliminate this uncertain factor, they could only make Harry disappear from this world. Harry wasn't interested in this suggestion from Sean. His enemy was the council, so there was no need to involve more forces. The reason why he had agreed to form an alliance with the royal family was because the royal family had already been involved, and it was impossible for them to escape the consequences. The other powers were either powerful and didn't care about Harry, or they were too weak and had no idea he even existed. Even if they joined Harry's alliance, their usefulness would be limited. Looking at Harry's non-committal expression, Sean still tried his best to persuade him. "It doesn't matter. Actually, I don't want to involve too many people in this matter. It's enough to face the council alone. I wouldn't even blame you and your family if you left me to fight the council alone." Sean said with a determined look, "No, the royal family will always be your staunch ally." "You're really persistent," Harry laughed. Sean shook his head. "This isn't persistence, it's keeping a promise. Since we've already fulfilled our promise, we won't betray you." Harry nodded in appreciation. Harry could be considered to have a charm by having such a loyal ally. It was a pity that Harry could only listen to the empty words. When the time came to see the truth, Harry would be eager to know how deep the royal family's loyalty goes. Harry was used to fighting alone. He didn't feel that others had any obligation to help him. "Harry, please think about my opinions carefully. Although those forces that want to buy drones aren't strong, there are a lot of them. Even if we don't expect them to help us, it's still good for us to help them." It was true that Sean was trying his best to persuade Harry. It was for Harry's own good. Sean was just eager to take advantage of the situation. As long as Harry agreed, all the small forces would have to look to Sean for help, and he could make them sign some profitable deals. Ever since he had dealt with Harry, Sean's ambition had swelled. He wanted to use Harry's power to help him defeat his brothers and become the king. Harry knew very well what Sean had in mind. Just because he didn't say it, didn't mean that Harry didn't know. Harry didn't care. The power struggle within the royal family had nothing to do with him. Whether it was Sean becoming the king or anyone else, Harry didn't care. Furthermore, Sean had the friendliest relationship with him at the moment. If the royal family had another representative, Harry might not like them as much. So overall, letting Sean maintain his ambition and eventually seize the throne would be beneficial to Harry. Even though Harry knew about Sean's little scheme and had been borrowing his power to help him build up his prestige, Harry still agreed to it. Seeing that Sean was anxious to open up the sales of unmanned drones, Harry thought for a moment and decided to agree. "All right. Although I'm not interested, since you're so interested, I'll sell them." Sean immediately became excited. "Really?" Harry nodded. "I agree, but there are some conditions." Sean was stunned. He didn't expect that there were still conditions. He could only ask, "What conditions are you talking about?" Harry saw his cautious look and smiled. "Don't worry, it'll only benefit you." After saying that, Harry picked up the customer list that Sean had sent over and said, "I'm to remain completely anonymous." Sean anxiously said, "Why do you want to do that?" What Sean wanted to do was to be the middleman. Although he would earn a lot of money, Sean didn't care about the money. Instead, he cared about the invisible influence that came with the job. This kind of influence could be used to form a deal between two forces, or even a long-term trade relationship. In order to sit on the throne, Sean needed influence and reputation. If he wanted to get help, he could only look for it outside of his family. Without exposing Harry, all the buyers might be hesitant to do the deal, and Sean would lose out on his plan. Sean couldn't bear the responsibility. Seeing Sean's worried look, Harry smiled and said, "Don't worry, I won't cheat you. My idea is to let you be the agent for selling my equipment. What do you think?" Sean immediately became excited and said in disbelief, "Harry, are you serious? You're not joking with me, are you?" Harry said seriously, "Do you think I'd joke about this?" Sean immediately waved his hand. No. I'm not questioning you. I just think it's too sudden. This is a lot bigger than business. It's about influence. Are you really willing to let me handle this?" Sean couldn't help being excited. Harry's offer was much higher than what he had expected. Sean only expected to get the scraps from the deal he was trying to set up. But now, Harry was happy to give him as much of the profits as possible. Sean knew the difference between a middleman and an agent, and he believed that Harry knew what he knew. The middleman is just a bridge. After completing a transaction, if both parties wanted to have a follow-up deal, then there was a possibility that there was no need for the middleman. After all, the channels had already been set up. However, being an agent was different. Harry now considered Sean as one of his own people. "Harry, you must trust me. You want me to take care of such a big responsibility?" Sean couldn't believe it. He felt that he might be daydreaming. However, Harry reached out and patted his shoulder heavily. The pain made Sean clearly feel that he wasn't dreaming. It had all been real. At this moment, even the usually calm and steady prince couldn't help but have tears streaming down his face. He had endured for so many years and had no hope of sitting on the throne. Now, he finally had a chance. "Yes, I believe in you. You don't need to doubt my words. This is my principle. All you have to do is tell me that you'll do it," Harry said solemnly. Sean nodded without hesitation. "Don't worry, Harry. I'll make you proud." "That's good. That means I didn't misjudge you. I don't know much about the international weapons market. What happens in the future will depend on you. Work hard and don't disappoint me," Harry said as encouragement.